Hey guys, DH here and welcome back to Rio Paulo. We've already got some pretty interesting areas in the city, but in today's episode, I want to add a few more. We're going to start by getting all the roading and infrastructure ready for our downtown. Yes, that's right, we have got to get that part of the city ready because we need a downtown and we don't have one yet. We are also going to extensively rework our railway network. We're going to add in way more favelas. We're going to finish the stadium. We are going to add in an artificial wave pool. And we may even squeeze in a military base. So this episode is stacked, guys, and this is exactly where we are going to rework everything and put our downtown. I know that it's my beautiful New Zealand accent that's brought you back to today's episode, but I hope you're enjoying the content as well. The first thing we've got to do to set this downtown out properly is to move our rail yard. I'd like to put in a dedicated cargo line, and to do that I need to buy myself a little bit of room in order to bend the line around and into our cargo area we built a couple of episodes ago. This will help make all of the lines, including the passenger line, run really efficient within game. Eventually we're going to detail this area up really heavily, but for now let's just get these lines in. Next I want to move on to our highways. I want to change the lanes up a little bit, make this a little bit more efficient. There's one interchange in particular that we've got here that we built in the last episode that I want to make work a little bit better within game. Then we can move on to setting all of the downtown out. There's two things I'd like to achieve here. I'd like to have minimal traffic, and I'm not holding my breath on that one. And we're following the real life Rio model, so the road with the roundabout in the middle is going to be our main road. The next thing I'd like to do is rework the passenger railway, and we've got some real problems here. I've got two lines coming in, one from an outside connection and there's one running within our city from the industrial area to the main station. And I'm really struggling for passengers. Like, I've seen 2 people in like 18 months. We've got to sort this out, right? That's not right. I've got so much traffic on the roads and I'm thinking it's because the trains just aren't working efficiently enough. So off camera I hooked up some invisible paths because I suspected that it may have been my connections that wasn't running it properly. And hurrah, look at all the people walking in. But they're walking right through all the platforms I made, all the infrastructure around the railway that I made for the... Wait, what's that guy doing? That train driver's going to be fired immediately. Don't worry about it, guys, there's no problem here. You see nothing. You're going to see me try and do a few different things with these paths, but in the end when I realise where I need to connect them to, I end up making a raised version so people don't have to risk their lives crossing over the tracks to get to the train that they need. It's very important that we get this running in game. Like I mentioned, we need it to hopefully decrease the amount of traffic we have on the road, but also who doesn't like seeing hundreds of people move through a train station? I think that's really cool, and I'm desperate to see that here, so hopefully we can get it. Next I want to move on and detail the whole area up. I know it's going to work now because I've seen a guy with his dog walking up the ramp, so I figure it's working. And in terms of that detailing around the railway, it's going to be dirty. In real life, it's really dirty. You can see where the railway runs because it's a different shade than the rest of the roads. I know that's a really basic analysis of it, but that's what we're going to try and do here. Another thing you're going to see me do a little bit in this episode is detail surrounding areas. So, as you guys know, if you've been watching my stuff, you know I like to finish areas as we move on. And sometimes whilst detailing an area, it's just sort of natural to flow onto the surrounding areas. As it stands right now, most of that detailing is just decals. Mostly Sully's decals because they're freaking awesome. And that's still certainly enough to add a lot of personality to your city, but let's try and go a little bit further. I want to go back to our tram that goes over the aqueduct and make this look a little bit unmaintained. I think it would just help it make it look a little bit more realistic. In real life it looks like there's a little bit of road grass up here, so I'm sort of going with that theme. I'm going to make it look like it's a little bit overgrown, it's a little bit risky and costs a lot of money to send people up here from the local council to maintain it. And in the end I put a few bushes up here to finish it off, and you couple this with what we've done down below on the main railway and it's all looking far more realistic and just a little bit more interesting. We really don't want to have things too perfect. There's a really steep bit of terrain nearby here that I want to finish off with a few of those terracotta roofed houses and some bushes. Once this is done and we pair it with all of the dirty decals we've put down and the grunge we've added, this is looking much more realistic. I think this looks really good. I've added a few more buildings, a bit more graffiti where it's appropriate, like where it backs onto the train line and maybe not as many people are watching. But overall, the whole area is way more efficient. It's got a purpose within game now, it's working properly, and it looks more realistic, which is the two things that I'd really like to get right. The best view of this area at the moment is from above. It's starting to look really realistic, and the grunge we've added along the railway in particular is helping that. So let's move on to the next area, and it's going to be pretty interesting. With this big steep cliff here, I thought it might be appropriate to put some favelas in here, and I think this looks pretty good. We've also got a bridge connecting this side of the railway to the other side, and I've also just tried to add a little bit more personality into this area. So for instance, we've got things like this little wee soccer ground here that might just be some sort of council park that maybe the local kids have turned into a football ground so they can come kick a ball around together. There's also a couple of dodgy areas next to the train tracks that are just full of trash and dumping grounds basically. And it feels really good to finish these areas next to the railway as we move along. So I'd like to extend the tram line now, the one that's running next to the stadium, and I'd also like to detail around this line as we move it forward as well. And you know what that means, we've got to finish the stadium. We still haven't done the facade or the roof. And I'm going to be honest, there's a reason why I haven't, because I knew it was going to take a long time. But now is the time and we've got to get this done. So what I would like to do is I'd like to just use those concrete pillars, extend them all around the outside of the stadium, and these are going to be, or they're going to look like they're taking the weight of the roof. So the roof, what am I going to use for the roof? Well, I wasn't sure. My backup was always going to be to use the concrete pillars again, but they kind of don't have too much personality, so I was hoping to find something that added something. We're going to see a lot of the roof after all. So I chose a shipping container. Yeah, that's right, a shipping container. I've made this entire roof out of about 1,200 of them. I've used white and blue ones and more patience than you would care to imagine, and I have to say, I love it. It is nowhere near perfect. There's gaps all over it. There's certain seats in the stadium that you would get absolutely covered in water if you sat in on a rainy night. But I think it looks cool, it looks interesting, it's added a point of interest to the city. It hasn't made the stadium look any worse. In fact, I think it looks really cool when it's finished. And the wide shots, well, the wide shots look great. So the surrounding area around the stadium, I think this should be turned into some sort of a athletic park with a community pool and something that can host multiple events. We're going to change up the roading here pretty significantly. We had to in order to bring the tram line through the way that I wanted it to anyway. But basically we want to give ourselves a bit of room here so that we can build different things. I'm also going to push back the terrain a little bit from around here because we need some serious space. The first thing I'd like to put down is like a track and field stadium. Basically it's got stands for people to watch as well, but this would be appropriate if we're running on that whole Olympic budget that we did from the tram episode. Then this would make sense. This has been upgraded at the same time. Then I'd like to move on to that artificial wave pool that I mentioned earlier. We've had these new surfaces released recently that look like the ocean and water, which is pretty cool. It had me thinking of all sorts of different things we could use this for. I did a little bit of research and then seen that Brazil's actually been working on artificial wave pools. So I thought, okay, well, let's give that a go. Seeing as it's a ground surface, can I manipulate the terrain underneath to make it look like waves coming through? And the answer is yeah, I can. The trouble was that the terrain was very jagged At a guess, I would say that the terrain is running off a scale of 10 meters, so anything under 10 meters is very difficult to maintain a good control over the terrain. I had to flip the wave pool around till I found the grain of the terrain and then tried to make some nice smooth waves. This took a fair bit of trial and error, as you could imagine. I had to use all of the tools one at a time for various parts of the build, including the slope tool and the smooth tool. I've also used a pedestrian path to form sort of a border around one part of it, and I've tried to create like stands for people to view on the other side. This gives us a basic parameter that we can work within, and then the last thing I'll do is cycle through the various different water surfaces available and just sort of pick the best one. I'm pretty stoked with how that came out. That actually looks like real waves, and I think we're onto something here. But I'd like to make it a little bit more authentic, so we're going to add in the actual machinery that creates the waves as well. These are pretty much exactly what we see in real life as well, and they're basically just two big heavy plates that are hydraulically controlled that press into the water very quickly and create a big ripple or a wave that radiates out from the point of contact. We're going to have two of them back there, hence a 10-meter wave just rolling through this pool and bowling over anyone in it, or creating the best surf you've ever surfed on if you know what you're doing. This might be used for competition when the surf at the beach isn't working, but as you've seen, I'll finish it off with a few decals to make it look like it's breaking over, and then we can carry on and make a second little entrance to our stadium on the back of this. You can see here I've also added in like a little community pool, and this is just a vanilla asset. I've added it in because I'm lazy and I've spent far too long on the wave pool, and it's offered us a really unique sort of an area to create the entrance in here. I'm going to add the same shop front or storefront as a facade that we have on the front of the stadium. That's going to go on the back of the stands looking over the surfing arena and also entering the stadium. And then I'm just going to add things like prop concrete, couple of fountains, and just keep it pretty simple really. Right between the favelas we put in earlier and the artificial wave pool we've just finished is the last block that I'd like to fill out. This block here is probably only about 2 or 3 blocks away from where the downtown area is going to sit as well, and in real life what we see in these types of areas, in the real Rio I should say, is we see a lot of these really tightly packed blocks with small old buildings. Basically it looks like an old town. The road pattern in these areas is often very simple. It's just a very simple grid, with the biggest visual feature definitely being how tightly packed the buildings are. Like wall to wall doesn't even explain it properly. These buildings are literally covering every single square inch of these blocks. I'm not sure how I'm going to get on doing that within the game, but I'll certainly do it the best that I can with what is available. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find all of the smallest buildings that are sort of the appropriate style. Most of these have a footprint of 2x2, and I'm trying to avoid flat roofs. I'd like some sort of sloped roof because we're going to use the recolor mod to make it look like these roofs are terracotta, and a terracotta flat roof doesn't really make any sense. They have to be sort of gable end style. You can also see that I've left a lot of the roads till the end, or at least these little wee alleyways, because I wanted to find the exact size of these buildings and put these roads in as tightly as I could basically. There's also going to be more than one area like this. There is lots of old town style blocks scattered right throughout Rio in real life. Some of them are even going up pretty extreme slopes, so I can't wait to do that sort of thing. But when this area here is done, it really does give an old town vibe. Like, I'm pretty stoked with how it's come out. I've also tried to super contrast it with some really big office buildings right next to it. There's one last little bit of strip of land here that we have to detail, and this whole area is pretty well done. This little bit of land is also exactly where our tram line's coming through, and I'd like to turn this into a bit of a plaza. Maybe we could imagine that the old town actually swelled out to the side of the road as well, but some of the buildings were removed and it was just turned into a social area where you can go and hang out. I'm going to use those new water surfaces to make it look like there's a fountain here, or a bit of a custom fountain I should say, and I'm going to try and use an old brick surface to signify the age of the area. It's also pretty cool that we can extend those surfaces over the tram line as well, so I can make the tram line look like it was sort of made out of the same stone as this whole plaza. And I'm also going to add in some little markets and things like that, and some invisible pedestrian paths, and you know, this might be a good place to come and buy fruit and veggies and stuff like that. And I think having the tram line go through here, you know, I want to make this an interesting looking area so that when we do that tram ride a bit later on, there's just heaps to look at, lots going on. So looking around the real life Rio on Google Earth, I found this really cool little island that's sort of laying out off the coast, and my best guess would be that this is some sort of military establishment. I say that because it looks like it's got housing there on the island for maybe soldiers or whatever, and the big giveaway is there's massive battleships and stuff parked up around the island, so this has to be a military base, and I think this would be pretty cool to add in. So it looks like it's got a hill in the middle of the island, and all the housing's up on the hill. There's a little bit of bush around on the real steep elevation as it changes down to the flat ground, and then lots of sheds, lots of little docks and inlets for different warships to park up, and looks like there's maintenance areas. One thing that is going to be very different about our one is it's going to be much smaller than that real life one. I don't want this to be too overbearing out on the coast, but I'm also going to do it in a manner where if we want to come back later on when we've got better assets released or whatever, that we could really take this to the next level and extend it if we need to. In real life, I think there actually might be a hospital out here as well, but for the sake of our scale, we're not going to put that out here. We're just going to have little wee terracotta roofed homes instead, and I'm going to use the recolor mod to change all of their roofs to a really nice bright terracotta colour. And these buildings are all 2x2 buildings because we do not have much space here at all. Once I've wriggled all of those houses into their position, I can finish off this area right down to the ring road with a whole bunch of trees. I want to make this look like really, really thick bush. For the rest of the island, and the edge of the island in particular, we're just going to make it look like there's various little bays around the island that can house different ships. And I'd like to try my hand at making some sort of a dry dock. The one that you're going to see me build has given me an idea, now that I've completed it, to build an even better one in future. So I think eventually I will definitely upgrade this area. I mean, unfortunately we can't get too specific with the detailing of an area that's so niche like this at the moment. If we had a couple of war or battleships within the game, even just placing those around the island would give it far more authenticity than we can really do at this stage. So knowing that I'm going to come back when we've got some assets released and really do this area justice, I'm going to keep it very simple. We're just going to put down what we can. So basically we're going to have big long workshops and sheds and storage areas. I think I even put down like a couple of helipads and things like that. Some of the props we can put down at this point are things like employees' cars parked around the place. There's like boxes and crates stacked outside buildings. There's a little bit of rubbish around the place. And I think even as limited as we are at this point, this still comes out pretty good, I think. There's a lot of mods out there that I love, but I've got to say that recolor mod has been an absolute game changer for the aesthetics of this city. I can pretty much make any building in the game fit the genre of this city now. Well, you can see the military base came out pretty cool. I think it's pretty interesting. The dry dock area definitely needs some work, but I really can't wait to come back and visit this area again when we've got some like naval assets and things. We really have added some very interesting parts to the city in today's episode, and we've also done some pretty extensive detailing along the way. In the next episode, I might just give the detailing a bit of a rest for a bit. Nah, just kidding. I will be keeping the detailing knob firmly to the max. Chuck me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed today's episode, guys. Look after yourselves, and I will see you on the next episode. Catch you later.